Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar and expert panel hosted by ZeroLight and featuring expert guests from both Volkswagen and NVIDIA. I'm Jason, the Chief Product Officer here at ZeroLight, and I'm delighted that you've been able to join us today. Now, while we let all of the attendees get logged in and settled down, just a few notes from us. The session will last around 30 minutes. And we're going to welcome questions throughout, which can be posted into the chat. You should find the link for that in the bottom right of your screen. Now, we'll begin in a moment with a short framing of today's topic, and then we'll open up the discussion to our expert guests, which I'll introduce shortly. Now, as the head of product, my job is to have a highly flexible level of zoom, to be able to zoom in and out between the precise details of our products, all the way out to the big strategic trends that will be driving or indeed disrupting our industry over the coming years. Today, it is the latter, and we're going to zoom out to a significant strategic topic that I believe should be on the agenda of every senior leadership team that manages 3D data in the automotive industry. And that topic is the state and the future of our 3D model pipelines. Now, I think that if we were to reflect honestly on the 3D pipelines that exist within our organizations, we might admit that the situation is actually quite dysfunctional and quite unsustainable into the future. I believe that those of you listening today probably already know this. It's just that the situation is incredibly hard to fix or to change. So in today's session, we're going to dive deeper into this topic of 3D model pipelines, including the promise and the potential of a universal 3D data format for the automotive industry. To get started, I'd like to invite our guests to introduce themselves. And we will start first with Mr. Mark Gruszka, who's joining us from Volkswagen.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hello, everybody. So my name is Mark Gruszka. I'm responsible for the digital car visualization at the Volkswagen brand. Yeah, and we are building the digital twins for all our beautiful cars, doing this in a car configurator, and have a lot of content creation use cases, what we're doing together.
Great, thank you, Mark. Now I'd like to go over to Jamie Allan, who's joining us from NVIDIA.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here with everyone today. Jamie Allan from NVIDIA. I look after our media industries in EMEA and our collaborations with advertising and marketing agencies worldwide.
Brilliant. And finally, over to our very own Darren Jobling from ZeroLight.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Darren Jobling, one of the founders of ZeroLight. My personal background I'm from the computer games industry, so I did 20 plus years doing driving and racing games, and then we set up ZeroLight with the whole idea of bringing that level of engagement from games across into the car buying journey. So nice to meet you all.
Great, thank you, guests, and we're going to be coming back to you shortly to hear more about your perspectives and your experiences. Now, the fundamental issue that I think brings us together today on this session and that creates pressure in our 3D digital pipelines is the explosion in content that's expected to be produced downstream from the models for which we are responsible. And we can see this illustrated here in this graphic. These content-hungry channels are being driven by growth in customer expectations of a high-quality, connected, and personalized customer journey, but also by internal stakeholder expectations to keep up with the very latest innovations available. Now, supplying product-correct, up-to-date, and high-quality 3D models across multiple formats so that all of this content can be produced is a big challenge for teams just like the ones who have joined the session today. So let's take a look at a simplified representation of how this challenge might be approached. Now, I appreciate this graphic is probably not reflective of the exact details of your pipelines, but I hope that the principle of it at least holds true. Let's walk through it, starting with the internal teams and the agencies that automotive brands work with to create the wide range of visual content that we've seen on the previous slide. In order to do this, those teams will typically work in their chosen 3D software application or game engine in the necessary format for that toolset. For those teams to do their work, of course, they need model data. which they will typically convert into their required format in a manual process that might take anything up to 3 months. The data that they are converting from is what might commonly be called a marketing master model. And in turn, that marketing master model is normally created from the vehicle's design data. Now, one of the main reasons that these kinds of pipelines are highly inefficient is the duplicated model conversion effort for each team and each engine, not just once, of course, but to maintain the model with updates and fixes throughout its lifetime in market. So our observation is that operating in this kind of landscape creates 3 different scenarios for an organization's digital pipeline. The first is what we would describe as the vulnerable pipeline. And this is where an organization has committed to 1 or 2 formats and are able to use them very successfully to create the content that they need. However, by being committed like this, they do become vulnerable to things like price increases, to business model changes, to the engine falling out of fashion, or things like unsatisfactory support or roadmaps. The second is the constrained pipeline. Now, this is where an organization is also committed just to 1 or 2 formats, but they have a real and current business need to utilize additional engines or formats to improve or maybe to expand the quantity of sales and marketing content that they can produce. However, because of the cost and the effort to do so, they can't, and they remain rigidly constrained to their current options. And the third is what we would characterize as the stretched pipeline. This is where an organization is actively supporting multiple formats. However, doing so is highly expensive and consumes a lot of budget and a lot of company resources. These organizations become stretched, and in the current cost-saving climate, this becomes particularly problematic. So here at ZeroLight, we believe that the adoption of a universal data format or a set of universal data standards has enormous potential for the industry, specifically to remove or to significantly reduce the duplicated effort of those manual model conversions. With a decade of experience working in and amongst these pipelines and these problems, I think we understand the opportunity as well as anyone. And that's why here at ZeroLight, we've invested in technology that automatically takes existing model data into a universal model pipeline and format so that we can eliminate the duplicated manual work of taking models into packages such as Unity and Unreal, which we can see here. Instead, this allows us to focus on building out those amazing customer experiences for which we are known. So, with that short summary concluded, I'd like to open up the discussion to our expert panel. So can we please welcome back to the screen and onto the virtual stage, Mark Gruszka from VW, Jamie Allan from NVIDIA, and Darren Jobling, ZeroLight. Welcome back, everyone. So, first question of the day is I'd like to actually go across to Darren. Now, Darren, you've mentioned in your introduction that you've been working with automotive brands for 20 plus years across a variety of industries. Can you add some colour to us and for the audience today about the challenges that our customers face in their model pipelines?
Yes, thank you, Jason. So pretty much automotive, it's had a difficult time at the moment. I think Bain and Company said there was an automotive hurricane that was blowing through town. And I think that's exactly what we're facing post-COVID, post-supply chain issues, etc. And pretty much, as you were saying earlier, there's been an explosion in digital requirements, but at the same time, the OEMs need to save money. So in actual fact, we've got this huge pressure, reduced cost of sales, whilst at the same time saying, hey, there's all these myriad of different digital formats that we need models for. And I think really the game engines are a perfect solution, an obvious solution for that, because fundamentally they allow more output for less money. That's exactly what I was trying to say. So fundamentally, what's happened is you have model pipelines that have been built up over a number of years. Most OEMs have a sales and marketing master model, but you get this manual effort for each and every output. Worse than that, there's no collaboration. So if somebody enhances a model, say in Unreal, nobody else gets that benefit, if you like. So really, we're crying out for an alternative that allows people to collaborate.
Great, thanks, Darren. So, Mark, I'd love to come over to you now and get your perspective on what this model pipeline problem looks like, working at one of the world's largest automotive brands.
Yeah, as you know, it's like Darren said, we have a very good pipeline, but we have seen the use cases. What you've seen on the first slide are the use cases, what we really have. And we have it for 40 car lines with all the details, with all the local variances. And so it's a huge effort for us to prepare it 2 times a year and to make it up to date. Yeah? And what we're seeing in terms of a customer, there's really a content gap still. Yeah? We have an explosion of digital channels. We have more possibility in digital channels. And it's a technical question to add more and more parts here, but it's connected with efforts. And for the customer perspective, it would be good if we have a more universal pipeline which can close this gap. Right?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mark. So at this point, I think let's step slightly out of automotive and welcome Jamie. And now, Jamie, you've worked cross-industry and across multiple verticals. From your perspective of this, what industries could automotive look to for inspiration, or which industries might we be able to learn something from?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I think it's a really interesting concept, building more efficiencies in 3D pipelines, because ultimately 3D pipelines are some of the most complex things that any industry that does a lot of 3D has to deal with. I think in the visual effects and computer graphics sector, we've seen a huge amount of work put in to create streamlined pipelines, to create formats or applications that allow studios to work better together within departments. Ultimately, what we find in that space is you end up with very custom pipelines. It's standardized within that group. There is collaboration capability within, a team at Pixar who, have built something out to meet a certain need. When tools come out of a visual effects studio as a specific development or a new piece of software, they then have their own format because that's how they've been built. They worked as a pipeline within that time frame, but then they start selling as their own piece of software. So while you might have expected that, visual effects have kind of solved this, they solve it in isolation within teams, within groups, or within a studio. Where I'd say we're actually seeing this problem being solved quicker at a larger scale is in more industrial industries. Mm-hmm. So in retail and product design, in engineering and manufacturing and architecture. And I think, these are actually some of the bigger problems, because you have, huge amounts of data from so many different places and so many different applications. In architectural world, you've got everything from, the initial ideas through to the BIM and the construction information and the planning and all of that. So I think in the automotive space, there's much closer adjacent industries that are doing this. But also just within automotive, there is a huge amount of progress being made. I look back, a couple of years ago when we first started doing talks about USD as a way forward in this space, which we'll talk about more in a bit. But on that, first panel session that we hosted, we had Bentley Systems, who do a huge amount of work in digital twins in industrial, Foster and Partners, one of the largest architectural firms in the world, Volvo, obviously, innovative automotive organization, and WPP, one of the world's largest advertising companies. I think those 4 areas really highlight where we're seeing a huge amount of time and investment to help solve these problems now.
Great, thank you, Jamie. So Darren, I'd just like to come back across to you for the next question and dig into this idea a little bit more about the universal standards across the industry. So what would it mean for companies like ZeroLight and for the automotive brands that we work with to be able to work collaboratively or with a mutually agreed set of universal standards for 3D data?
I see 2 real benefits, really. I think number 1 is freedom. So freedom to use the best tool for that particular job that fits that job the best. And also cost saving, replacing manual work with software, fundamentally software automation. Now, if we look at, say, using the best tool for the job, there's no doubt that the game engines do an absolutely brilliant job. But fundamentally, they are buckets, which once you go into one, you can do a lot of really, really cool stuff within them. However, you can't go from left to right. You can't go from Unreal to Unity, etc. So fundamentally, the opportunity is to create a layer above those game engines. And then fundamentally, if you create your master model at that level, then you can get as many Unreal Engine models, as many NVIDIA Omniverse models, as many Unity models as you like at the same time. And that should be an automated process. And I think that would fundamentally, drive cost saving, but also give you the freedom to use that cost saving money to create the compelling consumer experiences that people are really after at the present time. So save money on fundamentally model making, invest that money in delighting the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Similar question, really, for you, Mark. What do you think it is about the automotive industry and the nature of it that means that teams like yours would have so much to benefit from the adoption of some universal standards for 3D?
Yeah, I think Darren was saying this. It's a question of freedom, but I think it's not a question of technology, because the user doesn't care. Yeah? He wants to have the cars in all the channels, in all the details. And if we do a user research, we see that the end is not reached. Yeah? He wants really interact with the car. He wants a digital twin, but in all the use case, in all the variances. Yeah? And I can tell you, because the world is changing, I have to spend 70% of my budget in data preparation. Yeah? And with each use case, which is adding, this amount is bigger. And I want to bring it in another direction. Yeah? In best case, I have a full automatic way, which is future-proven and open. And I can spend 70% of my budget in new use cases and in presenting these cars in more emotional situations and things like that to really inform the users. Yeah? And I think for this universal pipeline is a perfect tool.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm always under the impression that from a software supplier to automotive brands that teams like yours are always under pressure to go faster, to deliver quicker, and sometimes deliver more. Do you feel that that's the case?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you know it from two perspectives, one is 2 times a year, like the production pipeline, yeah, we have updates the cars. But that was the very traditional process. Now, for the car configurator, we're living in an agile world. And also because software comes in the car, we have to change it more often. Yeah? And if you things for content creation, yeah, then it's not only having a campaign in 18 months. We really do it now in 3 weeks, full scope. And that's really hurrying up, fasting up. But that's also what the customer wants. And that's why that's absolutely the case, that we hurry up. And for this, you need this better way for collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mark. So, Jamie, I'd like to take a slight pivot on the questions down. And we've had some references to USD and to OpenUSD. But for someone who's coming cold to the topic of OpenUSD, could you speak to what OpenUSD is from a technical and capability perspective?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of what we're talking about today is enabled by OpenUSD, and the exciting thing is that this isn't a new thing. For lots of people in visualization, it's been quite new for the last few years. But USD was created within Pixar to solve, as I was talking about earlier, some of their complex pipeline requirements back in 2012. So it's been over 10 years of work that's been going into USD. Number of those years just within Pixar. But then the interesting and the amazing move that they made, which was in 2016, I believe, was to open source USD. So this is a very different approach to what we've seen with lots of other in-house built tools becoming commercial applications in the visual effects and 3D world, they decided that it was more important that the advantages that this gave 3D pipelines was made open source. So I think it was just after they'd done Finding Dory, which was the first feature film that they delivered with a USD pipeline. They made USD available as source on GitHub. Since then, though, it's been an amazing development journey with loads of people involved. And what we've seen, especially in the last few years, is, people realizing that USD allows this universal data interchange between applications and between processes. It's a lot more than just another file format that we use to contain information about a 3D asset or a material. It can contain huge amounts of data, some of which might not even be, 3D data. It can contain physics information, it can contain materials, rigging, animation, everything that you need to do what USD stands for, which is a universal scene description. So it needs to describe everything in that scene, and it needs to be highly extensible. So you can input and connect into USD from many applications. Hundreds of applications in the ecosystem of 3D and data and process now are supportive and native with OpenUSD. This has made it applicable across many industries and use cases. We see USD being used in robotics, in autonomous vehicles, in factory planning, digital twins, and of course in the entire automotive content and data supply chain now. A hugely interesting thing to get really deep into technically. There are people, employed in lots of industries now who are USD developers. And that tells you how complex it can be if you want to really unlock the full power of it. One of the things that when we placed our bet on USD was to build our Omniverse platform for 3D developers and engineers on top of USD to make it easier to adopt OpenUSD as a way of working. The other really exciting thing that happened last year was that the Alliance for OpenUSD was launched at SIGGRAPH. And that brought together, industry leaders, Pixar, Adobe, Apple, Autodesk, and NVIDIA ourselves to help steer a very agnostic direction for USD, because it was becoming a little bit siloed. People were creating their own USD versions and variants here and there. And we want to get away from that because it's the only way that you have a real standard. The other interesting thing about that Alliance group is, in the general member list now, you have companies like IKEA and Lowe's, as well as people you'd expect like Epic Games, Side Effects, and Unity. But it shows that this is much more than a visual effects and a 3D driven thing. It's really about multiple industries. And I think the inclusion of Apple as a founding member is very interesting when you think about the future of spatial computing and XR and AR being USD driven as well. So we're going to see it being adopted as this general standard. That allows us to deliver more value across the entire chain. It allows innovation to be faster, and it reduces friction between teams, between applications, between industries, which is a really interesting place that this starts to affect us. When we want to move from an automotive model into a marketing or advertising model, that's a huge amount of that data prep stuff that Mark was talking about, that Darren touched on, sits in that interchange. Whereas if we can now interchange formats and data with zero friction, we're saving huge amounts of time and money and allowing a lot more innovation. So so the mission around the Open Alliance for USD is to ensure neutrality around USD, increase its adoption across multiple industries, and provide this proper standardization to allow everyone here to adopt it quickly and easily.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So quick follow-on question, Jamie, because there's an area of the adoption of OpenUSD that I find particularly interesting around business change and business management, which is this idea that the adoption of a universal standard such as this actually is only in part a technical challenge. Actually, there's also a cultural challenge within an organization and within an industry. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time with lots of different types of technology. I think especially with 3D pipelines, many organizations have developed them for maybe 10, 15, or even, 20 years. So lifting that depth of ingrained pipeline is a difficult thing to do from a cultural and learning point of view and an ownership point of view. I think it needs good understanding at a senior level, people who sit across multiple business functions to say, look, we need to investigate a solution that allows us to be more efficient across departments and across teams. How does this work, or how is this going to work best for everyone? And then help develop a way that you have, a business process to make those decisions and support those teams on their individual journey that's going to meet a bigger goal. I think one of the really important things there, though, is to make sure everyone knows that they're contributing to that bigger goal. Because where we see, potential, pushback or reticence is where an individual group feels like it's just them that's being told to change. Whereas when they see that bigger picture and they understand the bigger benefit and everyone's moving towards a really interesting goal, you get a lot more collaboration, a lot more buy-in. Steering committees are very important for this, having people who can go and feed back to their teams when changes are coming from top down in large organizations, when people are being expected to change.
Yeah, great. And Mark, from your side, and of course, within the limits of what you're able to share with us, have you got anything that you can add about these cultural shifts and these business changes from your experience?
Yeah, sure. I think Jamie was saying this. Our process, virtual at Volkswagen Plus, is 15 years old. So for 15 years, we're doing these marketing models and we're collecting all the different formats which was developing in the history and are currently doing. And that's very interesting to know, because it took me some time to understand that OpenUSD is not just another format. It's not the format 29 where we have to convert in. It's really a new way of collaborating. I have seen this last year. We have a pilot with a design team, and we have really tested out that the different business areas can work on the same model. So currently we create a model and we send it around. We have a global responsibility. We send it to the markets. But if you have a change, you do it again. But in USD, it's really a collaborative stuff where the designer can change something. Now we can see it on a marketing. You can even see it on a website. And in the future, you can even give it to new use cases in the real production and see what the car is currently building. There are amazing opportunities, and you are really working together, collaborative.
Yeah,
that's amazing. But it's also not so easy to reach. There are also some challenges in the way of collaborating. It's really a transformational project. It's not just a technical project.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So, Darren, again, building on that. So obviously ZeroLight's it's a SaaS company that sells into a range of different auto brands. And do you get the sense that these cultural and technical challenges are felt consistently across the industry?
I think it's interesting because fundamentally you've had the new EV players come along, and what they are is fundamentally they're building on a greenfield site, so they can go straight from first principles. They have generally a smaller number of models, and then fundamentally they can create this connected customer journey where everything comes together. Obviously, they then have different problems because obviously they get everybody excited, but then they've got to make the cars, which is a different problem. For the traditional manufacturers like Mark, they're brilliant at making the cars, but they've also invested a lot of money over a lot of time to produce a very good digital pipeline, to be perfectly honest. I think VW is well ahead of the game in terms of its digital pipeline. So, however, it is a brownfield site. So you have all these different departments that all have an interest. And I think, as Jamie was saying, you need to bring them together fundamentally with one common goal. So I think that EVs have proven it's possible to have this connected customer journey. I think for a traditional manufacturer, you just need to, what can I do to get that as quickly as I possibly can? Yeah.
Okay. And Mark, just one final question for you in terms of your overall perception of OpenUSD's potential to help us with this challenge of the pipeline. What's your perception of it?
So it's a huge amount. It's a really great opportunity because it's very easy. If you can strengthen the cooperation between the teams, you save money. If you save money, you save time, and then you save money. Yeah? And you know that. And as faster we are, if more efficient we can be, and the more we can take the time and also the efforts to fulfill the customer needs. So I think it's a great opportunity, not only in terms of cooperation, but really to optimize the processes in terms of efficiency. I really think it's the right way to go.
Great, thank you. So Darren, just as part of wrapping up the session today, do you have any input or advice on how teams that are interested in exploring this more in 2024 might get started?
I think for me, it's a case of if you're a traditional OEM, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So I think something that's fairly easy to do as a starting point is to maybe fundamentally your next new model, build it in OpenUSD under that framework. However, obviously people like Mark, as he was saying earlier, have a huge back catalogue of something like 40 cars. And they also have a good existing digital pipeline. So I think the easiest thing for them to do is to work on a way of converting those existing models via an automated process to bring them into OpenUSD. So as well as the new vehicles coming out, I think it's very important for manufacturers to have the full back catalogue on the system, and then they can generate as many Unity models, as many Unreal models, as many models for the NVIDIA and Omniverse that they need to actually create this compelling customer journey and produce all of these assets that really a modern consumer needs. Every single thing you need to know about a vehicle should come from the car manufacturer's site. Currently, obviously, you tend to have to go away and do the research yourself or go to a dealer. I think in the modern world, really the car manufacturer should have everything in one place that you need to know about the vehicle.
Great, thank you. So we are going to start wrapping up the session for today. So thank you to all of the speakers. But before we do close, is there anyone who would like to add any final insights or input, but they haven't had a chance to?
I guess the only one thing I'd add is that, the joy of OpenUSD being open and a standard is that it's free to go and get started and learn about this and start seeing if it works with the tools you already have today. I think you mentioned lots of the resources that are out there, but yeah, it's a very easy thing to go and get started with and start learning about because there's no upfront cost to it. Yeah, great. Okay, well, all that really remains is for me to say thank you to our expert panel for their input today. So thank you to Mark, and thank you to Jamie, and thank you to Darren. If today's topic has been of interest to you and you would like to explore it more, either in person or on a call, now we will be at CES if you are interested in an in-person meetup there. If virtually, then that's fine as well, and we can accommodate that, of course. You can contact me at the email address shown, or alternatively, you will receive an email after the session, which will include a recording of the session, and you can reply to that and come back to us. Please do follow us on LinkedIn for the latest on this topic and others. And if you have found the session today valuable, then please do let us know and let your colleagues know and your network know as well. If you are interested to learn more about the vision and the mission for OpenUSD, then I recommend that you visit the Alliance for OpenUSD website. For technical resources about OpenUSD, then we would recommend visiting NVIDIA's really good documentation and community website, which we have also linked to. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you found the session and the webinar valuable, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.